On Saturday, I appeared on the Flashcast stream and had an interesting debate with Nick Rekieta about capitalism versus ethics, or as Nick calls it, communism. Apparently not wanting people to be screwed over by selfish douchebags trying to make a buck off of people's suffering is the same as wanting to suck Pooh Bear's second belly button. I was fine with ending the debate on the stream, but he made a video about it, I'll link down to it below, so I think it's worth responding further. A good rule of thumb when it comes to a debate is not to straw man someone's position, and definitely not to do it to attack their character. Claiming I'm a communist because I don't agree with your position is a straw man argument and an ad hominem. I'm not bothered by him calling me a communist. However, it does show that he wasn't interested in having an honest conversation and argues from a severely skewed worldview. I'm fine with that. I deal with the far left all the time. It's just a question of whether Nick knows how biased that makes him sound, and it makes me question whether his arguments have any merit when he's starting off with lazy logical fallacies. This all started because we were talking about the Wu flu and the panic buying that happened when the lockdowns began. I brought up the incident where a Tennessee man bought 17,000 bottles of hand sanitizer and sold them online for nearly 30 times their retail price. Nick was surprised that I thought that it was appropriate for the state to take the items from this man in this situation. Nick's argument is that the man paid for all the items, so they were his, so he could do whatever he wanted to do with them, which is a fair point, and also not the issue at hand. When someone declares something wrong, I boil it down to a basic question. Is it the act itself that's wrong, or the nature of the act that's wrong? Let's look at Mr. Tennessee. In his video, Nick agreed that what the man did is price gouging, but he still argued that the man bought what he was selling, comparing it to someone buying up all the copies of Final Fantasy and selling them for thousands of dollars, arguing that no one gets to come and take those games. Well, one, those aren't the same situation, and two, what Nick mentioned is currently happening. People are buying up PS5s and selling them for ridiculous prices online. But that's not what happened with Mr. Tennessee. What happened with Mr. Tennessee is that he heard about the pandemic and people buying hand sanitizer and thought, here's a financial opportunity, and went with his brother to small shops, buying up their hand sanitizer and such, traveling a total of 1,300 miles between Tennessee and Kentucky. They then went online and sold the $2 bottles for upwards of $60. I find this unethical, immoral, and wrong. And if we go back to my basic question, is it the act itself or the nature of the act that's wrong? Is it wrong to buy up all the products that other people want to buy and sell them at 10, 20, or 100 times the price? Intrinsically, no. It is a douche move, and I think the companies that allow online sales should prohibit people from raising their prices to that extent, which would fall under the terms of services of using those platforms. But is that what Mr. Tennessee did? No. He didn't just buy up all the Purell at random and then, when he heard about the pandemic, decide to sell them at Gibson prices. No. He heard there was a pandemic, found out what resources people needed, and attempted to buy all those resources. And he does this so that he can profit from other people's emergency needs. He intended to exploit people's suffering. That is what makes it wrong. It's the unethical act of playing with other people's lives so he can make a buck. That's not me saying that, that's him. From the New York Times, quote, "It's been a huge amount of whiplash. From being in a situation where what I've got coming and going could potentially put my family in a really good place financially to, what the heck am I going to do with all of this?" Now, he later claimed that he didn't intend to keep medical supplies from people who needed them, but I think any reasonable person would understand that buying up what was being touted by the media and the lying munchkin as a necessity to prevent contracting and spreading the virus would result in people who needed it not getting it. He's not a dumb man. He's just selfish and greedy. You know, a capitalist. And like many capitalists, he's willing to exploit others just to make a buck, even when people's lives are at stake. His argument is that he has the right to do this, but the defense, as Nick gave during the stream and in his video, that those he's doing it to apparently don't have any rights themselves, which is contradicted by our law and the reason and ethics guiding that law. You don't have the right to exploit people. You're deliberately buying all the necessities in an emergency to prevent other people from acquiring it from anyone other than you. In that situation, I don't have a problem with the government taking it from you to give it to those you're trying to screw over. Although, based on the New York Times, he donated all the items. Apparently, he donated 2/3 of it to a local church and the rest of it to the state of Tennessee, who split it with Kentucky. Now, there are two interesting points here. One, why he donated it. That was because Amazon and eBay suspended his accounts, blocking him from selling on their platforms. The storage company where he stored the goods also booted him out. He had the option of trying to sell it locally, but with the news coverage, that probably wouldn't have gone well. He was stuck with items he couldn't sell, so it would appear that he donated it to get rid of it, and perhaps to garner some goodwill, because the Tennessee Attorney General's office sent him a cease and desist letter. Why? Because I'm not the only one with a functional sense of morality and ethics, So Tennessee has an anti-price gouging law, which this jackass violated. That law, by the way, is the very kind of regulation I mentioned in my debate with Nick, that he doesn't think should be in place because laws are communism. You need a law like that because there are people who will exploit others in this way. It could be benign, like the assholes buying up all the PS5s, or it could be people trying to make a buck in the middle of a pandemic. Now, I do agree that if they just came and took his shit because he was the only one with it, that would be wrong and hard to justify. But that's not what happened. What happened is that he tried to exploit others to make a profit by hoarding things he knew they would need to buy. In that situation, I don't have a problem at all with the government taking those items, and only those items, and donating them to the people who need them. I phrased it that way because I don't trust the government with that much power either. The role of the government is to serve the people, all of us. This kind of government control should only be used in circumstances like this where it affects all of us. The principle of freedom must apply equally. It can't just be, as Nick seems to argue, that you get to do whatever you want to do, irrespective of how it affects others. To go back to Nick's Final Fantasy example, yes, you have the right to buy as many games as you want, but so does everyone else. So if you're buying up every copy so that no one else can get any, we have a problem. My solution would be purely capitalistic. Pressure retailers to refuse to sell you any additional games. They don't have to do business with you, and you're free to offer whatever money you want to whomever buys the games. But of course, they don't have to do business with you either. Next, pressure Square Enix to provide another way to buy physical copies, preferably one that would require you to spam that service in order to get all the copies, which could potentially violate the law, allowing the rest of us to get the game and watch our dumbass get locked up. Nick then goes on to mention an analogy I used about water, and he gets it wrong. He says the analogy is that if he has water and I need water to live, I don't get to come and take his water. I would agree, but that wasn't my analogy. My analogy was that if there was a sole source of fresh water that everyone was using, and you buy the land the water is on, dam the water, and then try to sell it to us at insane prices, this is unethical and you should be prevented from doing it. And if necessary, the water should be taken from you so the rest of us don't die. If you have the right to live, which I assume Nick agrees with, he seems a man unfamiliar with ethics, so I could be wrong, then it's unethical and immoral to deliberately block off the sole source of water, whether you're doing it to make a profit or use it for something else or just to do it. It's a required resource for existence, so no, you don't get to do that. The same goes for air and food. You're welcome to build a farm, grow food, and refuse to share it. You're not welcome to go to an area that's the sole source of food, claim it for yourself, and then try to profit off of starving people. As for whether people can take it from you, yes, they can. It's called war. You have a resource, and you withhold that resource, and people will eventually come and take it from you, and probably kill your family and you in the process. In that order, so you suffer before you die. And who will you turn to when this happens? The government? That commie institution with the commie things called laws? You know, the regulations used to justify defending the rights you claim you have? You don't exist in a vacuum by yourself. You live in a society with other people. So while you have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, shocking as it may seem to Nick, so does everyone else. For us to function as a society, we must protect the rights of everyone, not just you. That requires some policy, regulation, or law, and the means of enforcing it so that everyone's rights are protected and respected, which means we will need to compromise because our actions affect other people. It's the guiding principles of reason and ethics that allow you to argue that you even have rights, let alone argue that they should be protected. It's those guiding principles that govern our interactions with each other, and the same principles that make slavery wrong, that make forced prostitution wrong, that make exploiting children wrong, that make lying to customers about your products wrong, that make price gouging wrong. You can try to rationalize the "it's mine, I can do what I want" argument all you want. That doesn't make it true. The moment you affect other people, the situation changes. It's not just your rights we're dealing with, but theirs too. There's another major flaw in Nick's logic, which is that he's very confident that all of this will play out in a perfect version of his utopic capitalist worldview. He thinks no one can take what he bought because he bought it, so it's his. Except sometimes the thing sold doesn't belong to the person who sold it. If someone sells you a stolen item, do you get to keep it because you bought it? If I understand Nick's logic, the answer is yes. The ethical, logical, and legal answer is no. Ignoring logic, ethics, and reason is how we get people like Martin Shkreli. Nick brought him up during the debate, and given that I knew very little about his situation other than the price hike on a drug and him going to jail for something unrelated, I wasn't prepared to talk about the issue and walked right into Nick's gotcha, where he withheld information about Shkreli to then spring it on me to prove me wrong, which I also wasn't anticipating, a mistake I won't repeat. What happened with Mortimer is that his company bought the drug Daraprim, which is used to treat parasites and the type of pneumonia associated with HIV/AIDS. The company raised the price from $13.50 to $750 overnight. The patent for Vampire Hunter D had expired, but there wasn't any generic version of the drug, meaning Mortimer's company had the only source. To ensure this, the acquisition deal included the condition that it be removed from wholesalers and pharmacies, preventing anyone from buying it to potentially make a generic copy. It could only be purchased through the new Daraprim Direct program. There was some contention between me and Nick about Martin's intentions, however it looks like I was right. This was done with the intent of screwing over people who needed the drug. According to Science Mag, presentations from Martin's former company Retrofin, quote, suggested that a closed distribution system could prevent generic competitors from legally obtaining the drugs for bioequivalence studies required for FDA approval of a generic drug. In short, he tried to block anyone else from making the drug so he'd be the only source and could charge as much as he wanted. He did exactly what I said, exploited people's suffering to make a buck. Nick says that there was an interview in which Mortimer claimed that he could use the money to create another drug to treat another illness. My position is that it's unethical to suddenly spike the price of the medication people need to survive. It doesn't matter whether he has the right to do it or what he's going to do with the money. It's the ethics of what he's doing. And yes, I do realize the pointlessness of arguing ethics with a lawyer. Nevertheless, it's the nature of the act that makes this wrong, not the act itself. So as Nick said in the stream, the company did make some adjustments, although they weren't the altruistic gesture he made them out to be. The company only did it after it faced massive backlash over its price gouging. According to the New York Times, the company refused to lower the list price, but offered up to a 50% discount to hospitals and pledged no one would be denied access. However, the article points out that many patients continue to need the drug after leaving the hospital, so the discount only goes so far. The company did say it would reduce the copays for commercially insured patients to no more than $10 and would donate money to a charity to help Medicare patients with their copays. They also said they would offer the drug for free to qualified uninsured patients with incomes at or below 500% of the federal poverty level. That seems like a lot of trouble that could have been avoided by not spiking the price so damn high. The company had the right to do it, but the way they did it was highly unethical and likely resulted in Martin Shkreli getting more attention from the feds, who were investigating him for securities fraud. Fortunately, his dick move caused other companies to research ways to provide an alternative to the needed medication and offer it at an affordable price. I'm sure Nick will say that this is a free market working things out, which is true, except it's doing it at other people's expense. And I'm sure Nick's response would be, yeah, tough, which suggests maybe he was born in the wrong time. The South could have used him during the 1850 Compromise. This isn't about whether you have the legal right to do something. This is about the ethics of what you're doing. It's that principle that allows me to be free. If we followed Nick's logic, me and everyone who looks like me would still be enslaved because no one has the right to take other people's property. This idea that the free market is this flawless good is defied by reality. Yes, the free market may result in a company creating better kerosene, as Nick mentioned about standardized oil. It also results in big tobacco producing a product that kills its users and then lying about its cancer-causing and addictive properties, marketing that product to children, and trying to stop anyone from finding out. It results in companies building private prisons that hire fewer guards, provide less training for those guards, offer little protection for the inmates, and pays off judges and prosecutors to get more convictions so they can have more inmates so they can make more money. And of course, there should be no laws, rules, or regulations managing any of this. The company should be allowed to do whatever they want and face no accountability to anyone other than themselves and the free market. That system of such high ethics and morality that it acted in the case of big tobacco. Oh, wait. I agree that the solution to greed and exploitation isn't to regulate the economy into oblivion, but it also isn't to allow people to go unchecked to the point that they're dominating everyone else because they have the right to do whatever they want. And domination is ultimately where this leads. Back to Nick's wingman Shkreli, his goal was to stop anyone from being able to make Daraprim or a drug like it so he'd be the sole source for that drug. That's not just about him making money, that's also about him seeking power. It's no different than saying we should put all our resources together to help each other and then positioning yourself as the only one who gets to dole them out. So when it comes to people like Nick, if they want me to believe in their free market capitalist utopia, they need to make sure that the shit that happened to Parler can't happen again. That was your free market being shut the fuck down because these ever so altruistic capitalistic corporations who just want to create a platform for free speech didn't want the competition. It would appear that your almighty capitalism isn't really about freedom, but about money and power. They don't need to get the pussy. They are the pussies because they're too afraid to admit what they're actually about. But what do I know? I'm just some guy.